happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend and that you got outside a little bit because today it is raining, which is no fun at all. But hopefully it'll wash all that pollen away because there's so much of it. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've gotten back into the swing of things after spring break and you're getting your schoolwork done. Hopefully within the next day or two, we'll know a little more about when we might be able to go back to school. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we get to see you again soon. So this week, I'm reading books about characters who are a little different. They don't like to do the same things that everybody else does, and they don't do things just because it's the popular thing to do or because other characters want them to do them. They just like to be themselves, and we're going to celebrate that this week because we should all be ourselves and celebrate our differences. So today's book is one that you might have read before. You might have even seen the movie before. It's a really good movie, but if you have seen the movie, did you know there's a book first? And it is called Horton Hears a Who. Yay! It's such a good book by Dr. Seuss, and it is a movie now, and it's a really good movie, but you should also check out the book, and we're going to do that right now. So here we go. Horton Hears a Who by Dr. Seuss. On the 15th of May, in the jungle of Newell, in the heat of the day, in the cool of the pool, he was splashing, enjoying the jungle's great joys, when Horton the elephant heard a small noise. So Horton stopped splashing. He looked toward the sound. That's funny, thought Horton. There's no one around. Then he heard it again, just a very faint yelp, as if some tiny person were calling for help. I'll help you, said Horton, but who are you? Where? He looked and he looked. He could see nothing there, but a small speck of dust blowing past through the air. I say, murmured Horton, I've never heard tell of a small speck of dust that is able to yell. So you know what I think? Why, I think that there must be someone on top of that small speck of dust. Some sort of a creature of very small size, too small to be seen by an elephant's eyes. Some poor little person who's shaking with fear that he'll blow in the pool. He has no way to steer. I'll just have to save him, because, after all, a person's a person, no matter how small. So gently, and using the greatest of care, the elephant stretched his great trunk through the air, and he lifted the dust speck and carried it over, and placed it down safe on a very soft clover. Humph, humped a voice. 'Twas a sour kangaroo, and the young kangaroo in her pouch said, humph, too. Why, that speck is as small as the head of a pin. A person on that? Why, there never has been. Believe me, said Horton, I'll tell you sincerely. My ears are quite keen, and I heard him quite clearly. I know there's a person down there, and what's more, quite likely there's two, even three, even four. Quite likely a family for all that we know. A family with children just starting to grow. So please, Horton said, as a favor to me, try not to disturb them. Just please let them be. So Horton is a big elephant who hears a very, very small cry for help. And instead of just saying, who cares? I don't know where that sound's coming from. It's too tiny. I can't tell where it is. Horton follows the sound and he finds the source of the noise on this tiny speck of dust. And even though he can't see the person, he decides to help them anyways. Because as Horton says over and over throughout the book, people are people no matter how small. And it's important that we help people. That's what we're here to do. So even though some other not nice characters like the kangaroos, and as we'll see later, some other characters think Horton's crazy and ridiculous, Horton's gonna stick to what he knows is right, and he's gonna help this tiny, tiny person, or this tiny, tiny family even, on the speck. So let's see how it goes. I think you're a fool, laughed the sour kangaroo, and the young kangaroo in her pouch said, me too. You're the biggest blame fool in the jungle of Newell. and the kangaroos plunged in the cool of the pool. "What terrible splashing," the elephant frowned. "I can't let my very small persons get drowned. I've got to protect them. I'm bigger than they." So he plucked up the clover and hustled away. Through the high jungle treetops, the news quickly spread. "He talks to a dust speck. He's out of his head. Just look at him walk with that speck on that flower." And Horton walked, worrying, almost an hour. "Should I put this speck down?" Horton thought with alarm. "If I do, these small persons may come to great harm." "I can't put it down, and I won't. After all, a person's a person, no matter how small." Then Horton stopped walking. The speck voice was talking. The voice was so faint he could just barely hear it. "Speak up, please," said Horton. He put his ear near it. "My friend," came the voice, "you're a very fine friend. You've helped all of us folks on this dust speck no end. You've saved all our houses, our ceilings, our floors. You've saved all our churches and grocery stores." "You mean," Horton gasped, "you have buildings there too?" "Oh yes," piped the voice, "we most certainly do." "I know," called the voice. "I'm too small to be seen, but I'm mayor of a town that is friendly and clean. Our buildings to you would seem terribly small, but to us who aren't big, they are wonderfully tall. My town is called Whoville, for I am a Who, and we Whos are all thankful and grateful to you." And Horton called back to the mayor of the town, "You're safe now. Don't worry. I won't let you down." So Horton was right. There is a man on the speck. In fact, there's a whole town on the speck. And what's the town called? Whoville. Have you heard of Whoville before? And what other Dr. Seuss book is Whoville the setting? Do you remember? The Grinch. It's the Whos. They're all on the speck that Horton has. Isn't that crazy? But just as he spoke to the mayor of the speck, 3 big jungle monkeys climbed up Horton's neck. The Wickersham brothers came shouting, "What rot! This elephant's talking to Whos who are not. There aren't any Whos, and they don't have a mayor, and we're going to stop all this nonsense. So there." They snatched Horton's clover. They carried it off to a black-bottomed eagle named Vladikoff, a mighty strong eagle, a very swift wing. And they said, "Will you kindly get rid of this thing?" And before the poor elephant could even speak, that eagle flew off with the flower in his beak. All that late afternoon and far into the night, that black-bottomed bird flapped his wings in fast flight, while Horton chased after with groans over stones that tattered his toenails and battered his bones, and begged, "Please don't harm all my little folks, who have as much right to live as us bigger folks do." But far, far beyond him that eagle kept flapping, and over his shoulder called back, "Quit your yapping. I'll fly the night through. I'm a bird. I don't mind it. And I'll hide this tomorrow where you'll never find it." And at 6:56 the next morning, he did it. It sure was a terrible place that he hid it. He let that small clover drop somewhere inside of a great patch of clovers 100 miles wide. "Find that," sneered the bird, "but I think you will fail." And he left with a flip of his black-bottomed tail. "I'll find it," cried Horton. "I'll find it or bust. I shall find my friends on my small speck of dust." And clover by clover with care, he picked up and searched them and called, "Are you there?" But clover by clover he found that the one that he sought for was just not around. And by noon poor old Horton, more dead than alive, had picked, searched, and piled up 9,005. Then, on through the afternoon, hour after hour, till he found them at last on the 3,000,000th flower. "My friends," cried the elephant, "tell me, do tell, are you safe? Are you sound? Are you whole? Are you well? Horton goes through 3 million clovers to find his friends in Whoville. Can you imagine checking 3 million clovers? Would you do that for your friends? That is a really good friend right there. From down on the speck came the voice of the mayor. We've really had trouble, much more than our share. When that black-bottomed birdie let go and we dropped, we landed so hard that our clocks have all stopped. Our teapots are broken, our rocking chairs smashed, and our bicycle tires all blew up when we crashed. So Horton, please, pleaded the mayor, that voice of the mayor's, will you stick by us Whos while we're making repairs? Of course, answered Horton, of course I will stick. I'll stick by you small folks through thin and through thick. Humph, humphed a voice. For almost 2 days you've run wild and insisted on chatting with persons who've never existed. Such carryings on in our peaceable jungle, we've had quite enough of your bellowing bungle. And I'm here to state, snapped the big kangaroo, that your silly nonsensical game is all through. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, Me too. With the help of the Wickersham brothers and dozens of Wickersham uncles and Wickersham cousins and Wickersham in-laws whose help I've engaged, you're going to be roped and you're going to be caged. And as for your dust speck, that we shall boil in hot steaming kettle of bezel nut oil. Boil it? Gasped Horton. Oh, that you can't do. It's all full of persons. They'll prove it to you. Mr. Mayor, Horton called. Mr. Mayor, you've got to prove now that you really are there. So call a big meeting, get everyone out. Make every who holler, make every who shout. Make every who scream. If you don't, every who is going to end up in a bezel nut stew. And down on the dust speck, the scared little mayor quick called a big meeting in Whoville town square. And his people cried loudly. They cried out in fear. We are here! We are here! We are here! We are here! The elephant smiled. That was as clear as a bell. You kangaroo surely heard that very well. All I heard, snapped the big kangaroo, was the breeze and the faint sound of wind through the far distant trees. I heard no small voices, and you didn't either. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, Me neither. Grab him, they shouted, and cage the big dope. Lasso his stomach with 10 miles of rope. Tie the knots tight so he'll never shake loose. Then dunk that dumb speck in the bezel nut juice. Horton fought back with great vigor and vim, but the Wickersham gang was too many for him. They beat him, they mauled him, they started to haul him into his cage, but he managed to call to the mayor, Don't give up, I believe in you all. A person's a person, no matter how small. And you very small persons will not have to die if you make yourselves heard, so come on now and try. The mayor grabbed a tom-tom, he started to smack it. And all over Whoville they whooped a racket. They rattled tin kettles, they beat on brass pans, on garbage pail tops and old cranberry cans. They blew on bazookas and blasted great toots, on clarinets, oompas and boompas and flutes. Great gusts of loud racket rang high through the air. They rattled and shook the whole sky, and the mayor called up through the howling mad hullabaloo, Hey Horton, how's this? Is our sound coming through? And Horton called back, I can hear you just fine, but the kangaroo's ears aren't as strong quite as mine. They don't hear a thing. Are you sure all your boys are doing their best? Are they all making noise? Are you sure every who down in Whoville is working? Quick, look through your town. Is there anyone shirking? Through the town rushed the mayor from east to the west, but everyone seemed to be doing his best. Everyone seemed to be yapping or yipping. Everyone seemed to be beeping or bipping. But it wasn't enough, all this ruckus and roar. He had to find someone to help make more. He raced through each building. He searched floor to floor. And just as he felt he was getting nowhere and almost about to give up in despair, he suddenly burst through a door, and that mayor discovered one shirker quite hidden away. In the Fairfax Apartments, apartment 12J, a very small shirker named Jojo was standing, and bouncing a yo-yo, not making a sound, not a yip nor a chirp. And the mayor rushed inside and he grabbed the young twerp. And he climbed with the lad up the Eiffelberg Tower. "This," cried the mayor, "is your town's darkest hour. This time for all who have blood that is red, to come to the aid of their country," he said. "We've got to make noises in greater amounts. So open your mouth, lad, for every voice counts." Thus he spoke as he climbed. When they got to the top, the lad cleared his throat and shouted out, "Yop!" And that yop, that one small extra yop, put it over. Finally, at last, from that speck on that clover, their voices were heard. They rang out clear and clean, and the elephant smiled. "Do you see what I mean? They've proved they are persons, no matter how small, and their whole world was saved by the smallest of all." "How true, yes, how true," said the big kangaroo. "And from now on, you know what I'm planning to do? From now on, I'm going to protect them with you." And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, "Me too. From sun in the summer, from rain when it's fallish, I'm going to protect them, no matter how smallish." Yay. So once the kangaroo and the baby kangaroo and all the monkeys were convinced that there were in fact people in the speck, they decided to help too. Though it's sad that they didn't believe Horton from the beginning, because Horton knew there was somebody on there and he didn't care how small they were, he wanted to help them. But what did it take to convince the kangaroo and the monkeys that there were people on the speck? Do you remember? How did they finally hear the voices of the Who's? Remember, it took one single voice to add to all the other voices. Remember, the mayor of Whoville, he found that Jojo, one little Who, was not yelling with the rest of them so that the kangaroo and all the jungle people would hear them. But when they added Jojo's voice, the jungle finally heard the Who's on the speck. So this just tells us that every voice makes a difference. No matter how small you are, no matter how tiny your voice is, you need to be heard. And so you have to speak out. You can't just play in your house when people are trying to save somebody, or when people are trying to make changes. You got to let your voice be heard too, because every voice counts. Even the very, very smallest makes a difference. And that's a really, really good lesson to learn, that we need to listen to everyone, and we also need to make sure everyone hears us too. All right, friends, I hope you have a great Monday, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Don't get wet outside, okay? Love you.